You've probably eaten chicken at some point this week. Maybe in a sandwich, maybe grilled, maybe fried. It's one of the most common foods in the world. But almost nobody thinks about where it actually comes from or how strange the business behind it really is. Here's something that might surprise you. A poultry farm doesn't just raise chickens and sell them for a big profit. In a lot of cases, the farmer barely controls the price of what they're selling. They don't set it. They don't negotiate it. Someone else decides how much that chicken is worth before it even leaves the farm. So how does anyone make money doing this? Why do some poultry farmers struggle their whole lives while others build large, successful operations? And why does this business look so simple from the outside, but turn out to be so complicated once you actually look inside it? Let's break it down. Here's the biggest misunderstanding people have about poultry farming. Most people imagine a farmer who buys baby chicks, raises them, and then sells the grown chickens for whatever price they can get, like a small independent business owner. In reality, in most of the world today, that's not how it works at all. Most poultry farms operate under something called a contract growing system. A large company, sometimes called an integrator, actually owns the chickens the entire time. The company supplies the baby chicks. The company supplies the feed. The company even tells the farmer exactly how to raise them, what temperature to keep the barns at, and when the birds are ready to be picked up. The farmer's job is simply to provide the land, the barns, the labor, and the daily care. In return, the farmer gets paid a fee, not a share of the chicken's final selling price. The company still owns the birds from start to finish. This might sound strange, but explains a lot about why poultry farming works the way it does. The farmer isn't really selling chickens. The farmer is selling a service, raising chickens well, on time, and at a low cost. If the farmer doesn't own the birds and doesn't set the price, how do they make any money at all? The answer comes down to a simple formula. The difference between what the company pays the farmer per bird or per pound of chicken produced and what it actually costs the farmer to raise those birds. This means a poultry farmer's income depends heavily on being efficient. The company usually pays based on performance. Farmers who raise healthier birds, with lower mortality rates, better feed efficiency, and less wasted energy, tend to get paid more per batch than farmers whose birds grow slower or die more often. In other words, this isn't really a farming business in the traditional sense. It's closer to running a highly efficient production system, almost like a factory, except the product happens to be alive and needs to be kept comfortable, fed, and healthy every single day. The farmers who do well in this business are the ones who treat it like precise operations management. They watch feed conversion closely. They control the temperature and airflow in the barns carefully. They reduce how many birds die before reaching market weight. Every small improvement adds up because the margins on each individual bird are thin. Now let's talk about what it actually costs to run a poultry farm, because this is where the real challenge of this business becomes clear. The barns themselves are a massive upfront cost. Modern poultry houses aren't simple sheds. They're carefully engineered buildings with automated feeding systems, ventilation systems, heating and cooling controls, and lighting systems designed to keep thousands of birds alive and growing at the right pace. Building even one modern poultry house can cost well into six figures, and most farms need several of them to be profitable at scale. Then there's feed. Feed is usually the single largest ongoing cost in poultry farming, often making up more than half of the entire cost of raising a bird. Even though the integrator company typically supplies the feed, its cost is still factored into the overall economics of the arrangement, and feed prices can swing significantly depending on the cost of corn, soybeans, and other grain ingredients. Energy costs are another major factor. Poultry barns need consistent heating in cold weather and cooling in hot weather, along with constant ventilation to keep air quality safe for thousands of birds packed into one space. Energy bills for a single large poultry operation can run into the thousands of dollars every single month. Labor is another significant cost, even though poultry farms are far more automated than they used to be. Someone still has to monitor the birds daily, check on equipment, handle sick or dying birds, and manage the loading process when it's time for pickup. And then there's mortality, one of the most painful costs in this business. Bird gets sick. Disease can spread quickly through a flock. Power outages that shut down ventilation systems, even for a short time, can kill large numbers of birds in extreme heat. Every dead bird is a direct loss, both in terms of the investment already made in feed and care, and in terms of the final payment the farmer would have received. Debt is also a constant presence in this industry. Because the barns are so expensive to build, most poultry farmers take on significant loans to get started, and many spend years, sometimes decades, paying off that debt using the income from each batch of birds they raise. This raises an obvious question. If farmers take on all this risk, cost, and debt, why do they agree to work this way instead of owning their own birds and selling them independently? The honest answer is that raising chickens independently and finding buyers on your own is extremely difficult in the modern chicken industry. Processing chickens, packaging them, meeting food safety regulations, and distributing them to grocery stores and restaurants requires enormous infrastructure that an individual farmer usually can't build alone. The big integrator companies already have all of that in place. They have processing plants. They have distribution networks. They have long-term contracts with grocery chains, fast food companies, and restaurants. For an individual farmer, partnering with one of these companies is often the only realistic way to get chickens from a barn to an actual paying customer at scale. This gives the big companies enormous negotiating power. They set the terms of the contract. They often set the price paid per bird. In many regions, farmers have very few companies to choose from in their area, which limits their ability to negotiate a better deal or switch to a different partner if they're unhappy with their current one. Because of this, farmers absorb most of the risk, the debt, the labor, and the day-to-day responsibility, while the integrator company absorbs the risk of ever-changing market prices and takes a significant share of the final profit once the chicken reaches the consumer. So if a single farmer working under one contract has thin margins and heavy risk, how does anyone actually build wealth in this industry? Just like with a lot of businesses built on thin margins, the answer is usually scale. A farmer running 1 or 2 poultry houses is often just covering their debt payments and basic living expenses. But a farmer who reinvests their profits into building more barns, running more flocks, and increasing overall production volume starts to see the economic shift. Fixed costs like management systems, on-site labor, and even some equipment can be spread across a larger operation, which improves overall efficiency and profitability. Some of the most successful poultry farmers today aren't running one farm. They're running networks of multiple poultry houses, sometimes across several properties, treating the entire operation like a real business with employees, systems, and long-term planning, rather than a single hands-on family farm. There's also a smaller group of farmers who choose a different path entirely. Independent, non-contract poultry farming, often marketed as free-range, organic, or pasture-raised chicken. This path involves owning the birds outright, taking on the full risk of raising and selling them. But it also allows the farmer to set higher prices and sell directly to customers, restaurants, or specialty grocery stores. This path can be more profitable per bird, but also requires much more work in marketing, sales, and building a customer base, something the large-scale contract system completely handles for the farmer. Let's talk about what can go seriously wrong, because poultry farming has some very specific and sometimes brutal risks attached to it. Disease outbreaks are one of the biggest threats. Avian influenza, commonly known as bird flu, has wiped out entire flocks in various parts of the world, sometimes forcing farmers to destroy their entire operation to stop the disease from spreading further. A single outbreak can destroy months of work and income in a matter of days. Weather and power failures are another serious risk. Because poultry houses depend heavily on climate control systems, a prolonged power outage during extreme heat or extreme cold can kill a large percentage of a flock very quickly, and generators or backup systems add yet another cost that many small farmers struggle to afford. Feed price volatility is a constant background risk. Since feed makes up such a massive portion of the total cost, and feed prices are tied to global grain markets, a spike in corn or soybean prices can quietly squeeze farmer profitability even if everything else on the farm is running smoothly. Then there's contract dependency itself. Since most farmers rely entirely on one integrator company for their income, any change in that company's policies, pricing structure, or contract terms can directly and immediately affect a farmer's livelihood. Let me know in the comments, what business should we break down next? See you in the next one.